Hey everyone, it's Dana, the Education and Outreach Specialist at the Zacharias Center, here again for another weekly webinar. So today I want to talk about some possible indicators and warning signs of someone that may have been abused. So we're going to go over different categories like physical, psychological, and behavioral indicators to kind of look for in your children, in your friends, in yourself, in your family members, people at your daycare, anything like that, students in your classroom, right? Different indicators to look for that could prompt that conversation to see if everything's going okay at home, if anyone has anything they want to talk about, anything like that. So again, these are possible indicators. Some of these that we'll go over could be totally normal, could be things that people just experience in their everyday lives and does not necessarily mean that they've been abused. But again, this could just prompt that conversation to have with them. So I put together a couple kind of slides that we're going to go through to talk about these different categories. Okay, so again, these are possible indicators of abuse. So we have physical indicators that we can look for, behavioral indicators, and psychological indicators. So here's just a few examples of physical indicators. So physical indicators, let's say we're in a classroom with our students and we notice some bruising or red marks or even scratches, right, on a child or on a student in our classroom. And we maybe are a little bit concerned about that and it's happening more frequently, or they're very excessive. There's a lot of them, or they're very, very easy to see. That might be a point where we want to have a conversation with that student and say, hey, is everything going okay at home? Do you have anything that you need to talk about? And just check in with them, let them know that they can trust you and all of those things. If anyone ever is complaining about burns, right? So burning on their skin if they have burns, or a burning like when they urinate, something like that, that would be a conversation that we could have with them to make sure everything's going okay. Same thing with any sort of pain that they are experiencing, especially if it's often, right? And torn clothing. So if they're coming to school with their clothes torn or anything, these could be physical indicators that there has been some sort of sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse that has been going on. So that could be something we want to have a conversation about. Now let's talk about some behavioral indicators. So some things that some people might be doing is having a fear of a particular gender or a particular person. So let's say that we're at a daycare with one of our kids and they have a fear towards one specific gender or one person at that daycare, one person in their family, something like that, and they're afraid of that person. Definitely a sign that we should prompt that conversation with them to make sure that everything is okay, right? Hey, I've noticed that you have had some hesitation when going forward with that person, or having a conversation with, Aunt Tia or Uncle John. Is there anything that you want to talk to me about? Are you feeling uncomfortable around that person? Something like that. Or overt acting out, excessive knowledge of sexual matters, or even when a child prefers to be alone, right? If they start to isolate themselves, they're very quiet, or they have this sudden change in behavior where normally they act a certain way and then they kind of suddenly change and act a different way. That could prompt us to have a conversation with them. Again, just to be that listening ear for them and be that trusted adult for them. And then we have substance abuse, eating disorders. If they're excessively layering their clothing, that could be a sign that, they don't want people to see what's underneath. That could be an indicator of sexual abuse happening, or some self-destructive behavior. These are things that we can look for in children, in our friends, again, in our family. Some of these could just be because that's how that person is, right? Maybe the child always has preferred to be alone. They play better by themselves. They enjoy themselves better by themselves. That's totally okay. So some of these are just possible indicators of abuse, but they are things to keep an eye out for in our friends and family and our children to prompt that conversation. Let's go over this last one. So psychological indicators that there has been some sort of abuse. If someone's having a lot of panic attacks, or they're self-hatred and they have this low self-esteem, right? So maybe, again, they have that sudden change in behavior, or they're always talking bad about themselves. They're having very low self-esteem. That could be a sign to have that conversation. Another one could be if they feel guilty or they're blaming themselves for a lot of things, or maybe they're in denial about a lot of things. That can be an indicator that some sort of sexual abuse has happened, and we really, really want to make sure that that person knows that what happened to them is not their fault, and that you're here for them, to support them, listen to them, and you believe them. Another one could be suicidal thoughts. If there's something where someone comes up to you and expresses that they've had those thoughts, it's definitely very important to have that conversation with them about how they're feeling and what you can do to help. So if you notice any of these signs, it may be a good idea to check in on that person. Ask if there's anything that they would like to talk about, if they need anything, offer resources and referrals, right? Be there for that person. If you have been sexually assaulted or abused, or if you figure out that someone has been, if you do have this conversation, here's our support line number. It's 24/7. It's free and confidential unless we feel like there is some danger to that child, or the child is a danger to somebody else. We are mandated reporters, so that is something that we may have to call on. But the phone number is 847-872-7799. Again, these are just some indicators that we talked about today to prompt a conversation to make sure that everybody is feeling okay at home, or at school, or at daycare, or at camp, right? These are all conversations that we can be having with students, or children, or family, or friends. Bye, everybody. That's all for today.